Welcome to the Skeptic Zone, the podcast from Australia for science and reason.
Yes, it's the Skeptic Zone podcast, episode number 460 for the 13th of August 2017. Richard Saunders here with you from Sydney, Australia, where the sun is shining down and the cats are happy. I think these are both good things. What's coming up on this week's episode of the Skeptic... Oh, by the way, the cats. Yeah, stay tuned at the end of the show for news about the cats or something about the cats. What's coming up on this week's episode of the Skeptic Zone podcast? We're going to kick off with the last interview recorded at the recent NECSS conference in New York. I speak to Natalie Newell from the Science Enthusiast Podcast. It's one of the things I like about these conferences is meeting new and interesting people like Natalie Newell. Find out what the Science Enthusiast Podcast is all about coming up. After that, it's the conclusion of our series of interviews with Ann Reid, the director of the National Center for Science Education in Oakland, California. And to wrap things up, Ann is going to tell us about some of the outreach programs being used in the United States, and something to do with Captain Kirk in Iowa. Then it's Brew Ha Ha Science, this week with Casey Harrigan. Is there a shortcut to exercise? Is there a pill we can take to improve our heart health or something like that? I wish there was. I don't think there is. Find out with Brew Ha Ha Science from Australia's Science TV. Then we have the latest news on this convoluted, bizarre story of the Vaxxed team promoting this awful movie Vaxxed up and down the east coast of Australia. It turns out that upon leaving our country, one of the team was told that she would be now denied entry back into the country for at least 3 years. That's Polly Tommy, and I think she's one of the producers of the movie. What an interesting development this is. And a bit later on, I'm going to try and stitch together all the threads, all the crumbs that have been falling from the table of information to bring you a picture of what we think happened. It's a little bit sketchy, but what isn't sketchy is the fact that the government have banned this woman from coming back to Australia for at least 3 years for peddling her anti-vaccination rubbish. Then to round off the show, it's an extended Maynard spooky action. Maynard at the pub, where just a couple of weeks ago we ran a series of psychic tests for the whole audience. Wow, what a fun night that was. One of the best times I've certainly had at Skeptics in the Pub, with the help of my friend Ian Bryce from the Australian Skeptics and also from the Australian Skeptics, Jessica Hazard-White. We did Xenocard tests. We did some water divining, and we had a really good time. And I hope you get some of the sense of the great fun everybody had at Skeptics in the Pub when you hear Maynard's sideline commentary. Oh yes, Maynard's the only man I know who can do sideline commentary from a pub. And speaking of Maynard, if you check out Maynard.com.au, I notice he's just put up a new video there, how to clean vinyl records. In case you wanted to know, because Maynard has a fabulous collection of vinyl records, which sadly got stuck in a flood damaged. But Maynard has been spending weeks and weeks and weeks scrubbing his records. He made a video to show you how to do it. If you're interested, Maynard.com.au, check it out. And of course, it goes without saying, you can also check out Maynard's award-winning podcast with Tim Ferguson from the Doug Anthony All-Stars called Bunga Bunga. Stay tuned at the end of the episode for more news, which has only just come to light today, the day of recording. I'll put that in at the end of this episode to do with vaccination here in Australia. But for now, it's time for me to run downstairs, run out the door, run into my car, drive down the street about 4 or 5 kilometres to a little cafe which makes fabulous chips. Or if I was in the United States, I'd say French fries. Hot chips with chicken salt, shoestring, Oh boy. While I quickly indulge in those chips, I hope you enjoy the Skeptic Zone. Looking at a sticker that says vaccines work, GMOs are safe, everything is a chemical. An interesting sticker here. I'm going to peel that off and put it somewhere where everybody can read it. I've got another leaflet here that says the Science Enthusiast Podcast. It sounds like a podcast I should be listening to. Is she saying yes? Who do we have here?
So my name is Natalie Newell, and I'm one of the co-hosts of the Science Enthusiast Podcast. And a filmmaker for the movie Science Moms, too, a documentary that maybe you might be interested in hearing about, too.
Just gets better and better.
It gets better and better.
For ignorant fools like me, tell me more about the podcast, please.
So the podcast is something I've been doing with my friend Dan Broadbent, who runs the A Science Enthusiast Facebook page and blog, which he has this huge audience of, it's getting close to 1 million people that follow his work on there that focuses on things like, that GMOs are safe and vaccines work and also crossing over into the sort of atheist secular world too. So he and I started this podcast a year ago just because we wanted to talk to each other about all of these things. And then actually we started the podcast the week after last year's NECSS.
Very young podcast.
It is. It's a pretty young podcast. And one of the first guest that we had on the podcast is Clay Jones, who spoke here at NECSS this year and spoke last year. And we just kind of got rolling and haven't stopped since.
Well, that's a good thing. Yeah. I'm just briefly looking at some of the names here. David Gorski, you've got, Cara Santa Maria, Britt Hermes, of course, and Britt's coming to Australia later this year to speak at the Australian Skeptics National Convention. There's a big crossover here with skepticism, isn't it? Well, it's science, really.
It is. And so that's why, I feel like what's nice about our podcast is we try to pull from these different worlds, science, skepticism, the atheist and secular community. Sometimes we have authors come on our show just to talk about books that they've done that have just enough crossover with some of these topics to, kind of build an audience from all different places. You'd say
it's primarily an interview format?
So we have, every episode has an interview, and then we kind of banter about current event type of stuff. We do a silly segment called The God of the Week every week because all the stories are kind of ridiculous, and I would say that I'm embarrassed for some of the things that I say on there, but it's like I don't necessarily have that much shame. But
we're all embarrassed about what we say on our podcast, believe me. You can see the novellas in the corner. They're always embarrassed about what they say on their podcasts. So
it's like the two of Dan and I, just having a good time talking to each other. But then we get some really fascinating people on. I think that's the best thing about being able to do a podcast is like having these big, interesting conversations with people that, are like that we admire.
That's good. And what's your reaction been from the audience in the last year?
It's weird because we actually have like fans, sort of. And this weekend, people somebody came up to me and was like, "Oh, I recognize that voice from the podcast," and so so it's cool. And I think that the conversations that we have are we plan them, but at the same time they're pretty candid and open, and the reaction has been really positive.
That's great. And well, folks, that's something definitely worth checking out, the Science Enthusiast Podcast. And how can people check that out?
So we are on Blog Talk Radio, iTunes, just wherever podcasts are found, Science Enthusiast Podcast. We have a Facebook page for the Science Enthusiast Podcast, and also just follow a Science Enthusiast on Facebook.
Do you have a specific URL? Do you have a page as such, or is it only through these other channels?
It's It's through those channels because we've now moved our main podcast site to Blog Talk Radio. So,
well, folks, I'll include some links in this week's show notes. But really, if you just Google the Science Enthusiast Podcast, I think you can't go wrong. And I know you can't go wrong because their leaflet has a picture of a cat with a big pair of glasses and a bow tie.
It's the internet, so cats have to be everywhere. So we've embraced that. Yeah.
Well, thank you very much, and I hope you enjoy the rest of NECSS.
Thank you so much.
Quackwatch, your guide to quackery, health fraud, and intelligent decisions, operated by Stephen Barrett, MD. Quackwatch is now an international network of people who are concerned about health-related frauds, myths, fads, fallacies, and misconduct. Its primary focus is on quackery-related information that is difficult or impossible to get elsewhere. Articles on quackery include quackery. How should it be defined? How it sells. 26 ways to spot it. How it harms cancer patients. 7 warning signs for bogus science. Why health professionals become quacks. And many more, including in-depth looks at acupuncture, chiropractic, homeopathy, naturopathy, and much more. Visit www.quackwatch.com. In this, the final part of our series of interviews with Ann Reid from the National Centre for Science Education, Ann discusses the challenges and the promise of taking science to the people, especially when it comes to reaching students.
I was talking about the fact that many teachers are hedging when they teach evolution or climate change because of concern over community reaction.
Right.
And so, in addition to trying to reach out to teachers directly and help them see that there are ways to teach these topics, even in communities where they're afraid of hostility, the other thing we wanted to do was work on the other side of that equation, which is how can we engage communities so that they can demonstrate to teachers that they've got their backs, that there are people in the community who care about science, who care about evolution and climate change, and who, so that the teachers will feel like the only thing that happens if I teach that topic is somebody's going to come in and be pissed off, that instead, if I teach this topic, some people are going to be happy. And that would be a good thing. So we started a program we call Science Booster Clubs. Mm-hmm. And I don't know if this is a thing in Australia, but in the U.S., there are a lot of extracurricular activities in schools that are supported by parent groups.
Okay, I'm sure there are.
So there might be a football team or a cheerleading squad or a band.
Right.
And the parents form a booster club and they have bake sales and they raise money and they buy uniforms or they pay for trips to out-of-state games or whatever. So we thought we'll use that model to organize communities into science booster clubs to support local science education. So we started the program as a pilot in Iowa. We started in Iowa for several reasons, but the main one being that the woman we hired to run this program had just finished her postdoc there and had really good connections in the local schools. But the other thing is Iowa is a great microcosm of the whole United States. It has very liberal areas, it has very conservative areas. Some Australians may have heard of it because of the Iowa caucuses. It's the first presidential primary state.
And Captain Kirk comes from Iowa.
Does he now?
Yes.
I didn't know that. Wow, that is a detail that I didn't know about Captain Kirk.
There you go.
Anyway, she started organizing these booster clubs, and what they did was bring science activities to local community events, like a farmer's market or a county fair or a public library. And all of the activities are either about climate change or about evolution.
Oh, wow.
But the approach is completely non-confrontational. We are absolutely rigorously no conflict. This is about come and do this activity yourself, come and bring your kid to do this activity, engage with the science yourself, and we're not going to tell you what to think. We don't compromise the science. It's not like we say some people say this and some people say that. We're presenting the legitimate science, but we're doing it in a way that allows people to engage with it themselves. So, for example, we have an activity called Ocean Acidification Crisis. Now, you might think that ocean acidification would not be a topic that would get a lot of pickup in Iowa.
In Iowa.
But the activity is really fun. So there's plastic cups with water in them, straws, pH paper. So you take the pH of the water, and then you blow bubbles for 2 minutes. And then you take the pH again. And it will have gone down, or the water will have become more acidic. Right. So it's a hands-on activity showing the effect of CO2 on acidity. And then you can talk about the fact that this is what happens when CO2 levels rise in the atmosphere. The ocean absorbs that CO2 and becomes more acidic. Well, what? Then they have a series of jars with mussel shells in them at different pHs and show the mussel cells start to dissolve when the acidity is high. So that people can make a one-to-one connection between what they just did with their breath and what happens in the ocean.
Wow,
and then if they have the possibility of it, they'll have a little aquarium with a shrimp in it and say, "This is a shrimp. Everybody knows what a shrimp is."
Yeah.
Although a shocking number of people are not aware that shrimp are animals. So seeing the shrimp alive with its little legs is often kind of an aha moment for people.
What do they think they are?
I don't know.
Huh?
They're seafood. Maybe they're a fish. I don't know.
Okay.
I don't know. Another shocking thing about the Booster Club activities is that one of the first activities was a greenhouse. They just got a little portable greenhouse and you'd take as many kids as you could pack in there and give them a CO2 monitor and a temperature gauge and have them stay in there for 5 minutes and show that the CO2 level goes up and the temperature goes up in the greenhouse. It's just, again, a sort of hands-on experience of nature.
Yes.
And we were shocked how many people didn't know what a greenhouse was, or didn't know that in a greenhouse it gets really hot.
Wow.
So that what we talked about at the very beginning about people being very alienated from science and really having had very little engagement with the natural world after they get out of school, this is just being confirmed, event after event after event with these booster clubs. But the cool thing is that people love it. Every place that these booster clubs have done an activity, they've been invited back.
That's good.
After about 2 months, we didn't have to go out and hunt for places to put on our activities. We were being asked to bring them. Even though we're bringing the potentially highest conflict topics to areas where there's a lot of disagreement about these issues. Last summer, we had a booth at the Iowa State Fair, which is a huge deal. Something like a quarter of Iowa's population goes to the State Fair every year. We had a booth on evolution at the Iowa State Fair.
Wow.
About 10,000 people visited that booth.
Wow.
And we had no pushback. We had no conflict.
That's remarkable.
And so in the last 2 years, these groups have now done these activities with about 80,000 people in Iowa. And they've raised money for teachers. They've engaged local graduate students and given them an opportunity to learn how to do public engagement even on high conflict issues. So we're now expanding this concept to 9 other states. We're going from 3 clubs to 18 clubs this year. We've set the whole thing up as a research project, so we're measuring community scientific literacy and community science acceptance in the communities that have these booster clubs. And ultimately, our hope is that these clubs will help provide teachers, again, with the confidence to go ahead and teach these topics without being afraid. So I just wanted to make sure that I got that in, because it's, I think, going to be a very powerful way to bring science to communities where we're in real danger of starting to think of ourselves as some people are pro-science and some people are anti-science. That's just not the experience that we're having in Iowa, that people who are even in the most Republican parts of the state, people love science. and they love bringing their kids to science events, and they love doing these activities themselves. So we just can't afford to write them off and say, oh, well, they're anti-science. There's nothing we can do, because we can. We can do something. So we're pretty excited about that program.
Well, Anne, it's been so fascinating. I love coming back here. I don't care where your office is. It could be anywhere in the world. It's a wonderful thing to be in the office of the National Centre of Science Education. How can people find out more? Where can they visit?
NCSE.com on the web. We have lots of information there. And, of course, if you become a member, you can get our newsletter every 3 months. And the newsletter now really focuses on what are we doing for teachers, how are our booster clubs doing, what kinds of flare-ups have we dealt with, and what's been the outcome of these legislation across the United States and sometimes around the world. So the newsletter is a great way to keep up to date with what we're doing, and of course the website is very rich.
Yeah, well, I think it's applicable for science teachers no matter where you are, from Australia to the United States to everywhere. I think any science teacher would do well to visit your site. Once again, Anne, pleasure to be here.
Thank you. It was great to see you again.
That was the final of our series of interviews with Ann Reid. I'd like to thank Anne very much for her time, and I look forward to my next visit. And now, direct from the cafe at Australia's Science Channel, it's Brew Ha Ha. Science in less time than it takes to order a coffee. With Casey Harrigan.
Sorry to break your heart, but if something sounds too good to be true, it is. Here's what's true. Researchers have discovered a protein that helps the heart grow in the same way that exercise does. Heart muscle has evolved to pump blood around the body, and we can strengthen it by exercising. But for people with heart failure, things get a little more complicated. Heart muscles that used to be strong become weak, and other muscles start overcompensating and cause more harm than good. The newly discovered protein strengthens the good muscles and shrinks the bad overcompensating muscles. And here's what's too good to be true. 1 million headlines screaming exercise pill. The protein does mimic the effects of exercise on this one specific muscle. But there's no such thing as an exercise pill, or any shortcut when it comes to working out. There's no point having a strong heart if you have no aerobic endurance or body strength. Only exercise gives you the holistic benefits of everything from bone strength to lung capacity to an endorphin rush. So it's great news for people with heart problems, but the rest of us still need to hit the gym.
For more Brew Ha Ha and Australian science, visit www.australiascience.tv or visit Australia's Science Channel on Facebook.
QED 2017 is fast approaching, and you don't want to miss it. In the past, QED has brought you the Arrows of Time, the origin of recording, an escape from the Westboro Baptists, the sex bias of sex science, and all manner of other science, pseudoscience, activism, slacktivism, and more. Plus, insects for breakfast. Yum. QED 2017 takes place on the 14th and 15th of October in Manchester, England. We've already announced speakers like Sophie Wilson, co-inventor of the ARM computer chip, Simon Singh, who will be showing how to crack a genuine Enigma machine, Phil Scraton talking through the real-life cover-up of the Hillsborough tragedy, and physicists Helen Chersky and Tim O'Brien. We'll have a live show from the Parapod Boys, and the whole event will be emceed by ace magician Dave Annick. Have some laughs, meet some new friends, make new connections, all for only £109, including all the main stage talks, panels, podcasts, workshops, our Saturday night entertainment, and lots more. Check out qedcom.org for details. We'll see you in October.
Last week we brought you the story of the Vaxxed movie touring Australia. In fact, for the last few weeks I think we've been mentioning this. Well, dramatic happenings over the last week when the Vaxxed team left the country to head to New Zealand to peddle their nonsense. One of them, Polly Tommy, was detained at the airport. And, as a result, she has been denied entry back into Australia for at least 3 years. And I would hazard a guess to say, even after 3 years, it would be very unlikely that she would get back into this country. Let's see if we can put together some of the threads of the story that has been emerging over the last week. As published on The Age Online, theage.com.au by Melissa Cunningham on the 9th of August 2017. Anti-vaccination advocate banned from Australia after documentary tour. The producer behind a controversial anti-vaccination film, which has been touring Australia, has been banned from returning to the country for 3 years, she claims. British anti-vaccination campaigner Polly Tommy, who believes the measles, mumps, rubella vaccine caused her son's autism, sparked outrage when she told audiences around Australia that, quote, doctors were murderers, end quote. Ms. Tommy spearheaded a sold-out national road show of the documentary Vaxxed, From Cover-Up to Catastrophe, organised by the Australian Vaccination Skeptics Network. Directed by Andrew Wakefield, a former doctor whose debunked study played a key role in the anti-vaccination movement, the film reignites false claims about the link between mumps, measles and rubella vaccine and autism. Hours after being banned from the country, Ms. Tommy took to social media to condemn the federal government. In a video posted on YouTube on Tuesday, Ms. Tommy claimed authorities seized her phone and copied her emails as she left Australian soil to continue the New Zealand leg of the film tour. Quote, Australia to me is literally the worst country I've visited, end quote, she said. Quote, not the people, the government, end quote. Ms. Tommy said she was interrogated about her involvement in the documentary and banned for 3 years, although admitted she does not yet have any documents to confirm this. She was banned from the country over alleged visa breaches, she said. Quote, they, Australian Border Force, told me I was banned from Australia for 3 years and that I would be getting a letter to confirm this, end quote, Ms. Tommy said. Medical experts and political leaders discredited the documentary as anti-vaccination propaganda and a, quote, public health risk, end quote. A number of the secret screenings of the documentary and Q&A sessions were hosted in Australia, including one last week at Village's Crown Casino Cinemas in the South Bank and another in Melbourne's eastern suburbs. Earlier this month, the Australian National University's Science Department was also condemned for unwittingly screening the film. The Australian Vaccination Skeptics Network later uploaded videos of the event to social media, showing some of those involved claiming the event was implicitly endorsed by the university when it was not. Melbourne orthopaedic surgeon Dr. John Cunningham, who was awarded an Order of Australia medal for his research and promotion of immunisation, said it was one of the most dangerous films he had ever come across. Dr. Cunningham said the film had the potential to harm generations of children in Australia. Quote, we are living in an era where people are dying needlessly, end quote, Dr. Cunningham said. Quote, babies will die if they are not vaccinated. This sort of lies and misinformation are a threat to the public health, and people who promote these ideas should be treated with disdain and shouldn't be given a stage in which to spread their lies, end quote. Last week, the nation's health ministers also rejected the anti-vaccination movement and reaffirmed the role that vaccinations play in protecting children from potentially life-threatening infections. Federal Health Minister Greg Hunt condemned the film and said it was based on, quote, unscientific conspiracy theories, end quote. The Department of Immigration and Border Protection has been contacted for comment. Ms. Tommy has also been contacted for comment. And that comes to us from theage.com.au, published on the 9th of August 2017 by Melissa Cunningham. Now, it's interesting that the section of the PDF, or a PDF, which seems to be the official reason Polly Tommy was barred from coming back to Australia for at least 3 years, comes to us from the Vaxxed From Cover-Up to Catastrophe official Facebook page. And this PDF is titled Polytommy S128 Notice of Cancellation.pdf, and it appears to be from the federal government, from Border Force, which is the arm of government which looks after our borders and regulation and import and export and all that sort of stuff, security. And in part the document says, information because of which the grounds were considered to exist. Open source information indicates that you are a prominent anti-vaccination activist in the United States of America. You recently visited Australia, participating in delivering seminars at numerous locations about anti-vaccination and promoted an anti-vaccination film titled Vaxxed. And the other part of the document that we have, or at least the section of it, which has been put on the Facebook page there, Polytommy S128 Notice of Cancellation, and this section says, presumably section E, the presence of its holder in Australia is or may be, or would or might be, a risk to 1. The health, safety, or good order of the Australian community, or a segment of the Australian community. So it seems, based on this, that Polytommy was barred from coming back into Australia for health and safety reasons. So far we've yet to ascertain whether it's because she lied on her visa application, but we have no evidence of that. But it's interesting to look at some of the responses on the Vaxxed Facebook page to this news and the posting of these documents. Here's a comment. Wow! When you think of the hundreds of millions they have put down on this country-wide vaccination brainwashing propaganda campaign, it's astounding that one person with a big, scary, threatening, different opinion could be such a threat! Exclamation mark, exclamation mark, exclamation mark. They are scared! Exclamation mark, exclamation mark, exclamation mark, exclamation mark. Well done, Polly. Well done, Australians. You are waking up! Exclamation mark, exclamation mark, exclamation mark. I won't read any more exclamation marks. Another comment here. Our government is so smart, aren't they? Insert sarcastic tone here. If I don't laugh, I may cry, LOL. Continue to ruffle those feathers, guys. Hashtag, we will win this fight. Another comment here. And who decides that information and debate about mandated medical intervention is a risk to the health, safety or good order of the Australian community? Oh, yes, those enforcing mandated medical intervention. ... Another one, we'll see you in 3 years, Polly. Love heart, love heart, love heart. Another one, right now I am ashamed to be Australian. Another one, that's no joke, the government control. And before it's deleted, I've just noticed a comment here replying to one of the other comments. Nobody is scared, you dingbat, nor is hers a different opinion. She spreads outright lies and misinformation which is soaked up by the great unwashed, willfully ignorant and mentally challenged. It is people like her and her rabid fans who put our nation's health at risk. Poor effort at turning a negative into a positive. So I expect that comment may well be deleted soon. Now we have more reports coming in about this case and why Polytommy has been banned from re-entering Australia. Accounts from one of the blogs that support the anti-vaccination movement, so it's couched in terms that would be positive towards Polytommy. Says she was detained by immigration. They asked her for a phone, her iPad, and took all her correspondence with the Australian group, Australian Vaccination Network, AVN. Of course, they mean the Australian Vaccination Skeptics Network. And photographed every piece of paper she had, filling up 3 USB sticks. Well, that would be extraordinary if you could even fill up 1 USB stick these days. She was detained for approximately 40 minutes and aggressively questioned. They wanted to know who was making money from the film Vaxxed and whether Dr. Andrew Wakefield was in the country. The agents also made her write Andrew Wakefield's name on a piece of paper. When Polytommy asked on what grounds she was being detained, The agents said she would shortly receive an explanation through the mail. That came from the Australian Government Department of Immigration and Border Protection and arrived on Thursday the 9th of August. Apparently, it says in part, evidence of grounds for cancellation. Open source information indicates that Ms. Tommy is a prominent anti-vaccination activist in the United States of America. Ms. Tommy recently visited Australia, participating in delivering seminars at numerous locations about anti-vaccination, and promoted an anti-vaccination film titled Vaxxed. Based on this information, I am satisfied that if the wider Australian community had become aware of Ms. Tommy's intended activities while she was in Australia recently, her presence in Australia would be a risk to the good order of the Australian community. It goes on, quote, good order, end quote, in the context of 1161E, is concerned with the actions by a visa holder which have an impact on the public activities or which manifest themselves in a public way, including the risk of adverse reaction by certain members of the Australian society to the visa holder's presence in Australia. Therefore, it appears Ms. Tommy's presence in Australia would be a risk to the good order of the Australian community, and I am satisfied there is ground to cancel your visa under Section 1161E. So that's couched in what we might call formal language, legal language. It's very interesting that that's the approach that apparently has been used, and again, we're only relying on what has sort of been filtered down through the vaxxed people and other sources. But I will say this, and it's quite a good lesson to remember, that complaints to official government channels can pay off. Now, skeptical activism in general is a good thing. We can raise awareness in the general community. But when it comes to the crunch, when serious action needs to be taken, it really is one of the duties of government. And government can only act efficiently and properly if it's aided and supported by its citizens. So, well done, all the concerned citizens in Australia who were certainly on the case of this wretched movie being hawked around the country, and took action in regards to formal applications to the or via the correct channels. This also sets a very useful precedent for future visits, or pending future visits for anti-vaccination activists. Don't think you can come into this country and peddle your nonsense without consequence.
G'day, this is Dr. Karl Kruszelnicki, proud to be a skeptic, and you can find out more about me at drkarl.com and get lots of free stuff there as well.
Here's Maynard's spooky action at a distance.
Oh, wow, what a wild night you are in for this evening. It's the first Thursday of the month, and that's when Skeptics in the Pub happens in Sydney at the Occidental on the third level. And tonight, we'll be going beyond, well beyond the third level. We'll be going beyond the Merchant Seamen's 10-year reunion that's on downstairs. We'll be going to finding some people that are genuinely talented and psychic. Now, I'm not one of them. I can never tell what's going on. In fact, I don't even know what I'm going to say next. But someone who can figure this out, allegedly, is a member of the shadowy elite, Mr. Richard Saunders.
Good evening, Maynard. Now, I'm right here at the table. We're setting up here at Skeptics in the Pub, and this, you can hear, that's the jangling of divining rods. And tonight we're doing water divining tests.
Well, actually, having done the Mystery Investigator show with you a couple of times, I know how they are used. And what sort of percentage do you normally get? Because I like it when we have kids and they actually defy the odds and they get it twice in a row.
It happens about the same amount of times you'd expect it to happen by random chance. Normally we get one in
1 in 50. What is it?
Oh heavens! You've got me. It's 1 in 6 and 1 in 36.
Okay,
something like that. Depending. Anyway, but also we have here on the table we have these giant Zener cards. There we go. Star, wavy line, cross, circle, and square. Tonight, Jessica Hazard-White from the committee will be talking about the origin of Zener cards.
Get out.
Yeah, before we do the test.
Again, a triple barrel name.
Ooh, there's something in that.
She was maybe the shooter on the grassy knoll.
I think she might have been. So we've got water divining test with our 6 buckets. There we go. A wobbly table, it looks like. We've got our water here. Mm-hmm. People got to look for Zener cards, and to round off, we have a heads and tails, which is a 50-50 shot each time, and the whole audience are going to be participating. They're going to predict the future with heads and tails. And also,
so how many goes do you think it'll take to get to the final person?
I predict... I've got to call it 6 or 7. I'll say 7 tonight.
And the prize that you're giving away is someone who was a guest on this previous show.
Yeah. The prize is, and then you're dead, a scientific exploration of the world's most interesting ways to die, autographed by Dr. Paul Doherty. There we are. There's the autograph. As autographed on the Skeptic Zone some weeks ago.
And don't forget, it is Skeptics in the Pub in Sydney at the Occidental, the first Thursday of every month from 6 o'clock through to about 8 or 9 o'clock, isn't it?
Until they throw the last person out, yes.
Okay, well, I'll sit down and quietly, I'll be your sideline eye on what the shadowy elite get up to tonight in their haven of misbehaving here at the Occidental. Right, here we are beforehand. Now, it's going to get very busy with Skeptics. Like I said, the Shadowy Elite will be here, and another member of the Shadowy Elite, and one with a triple barrel name. That's Jessica Hazard-White. That's a bit like Austin Danger Powers, isn't it?
Oh, I don't know if I'm quite that cool.
Oh, okay. Well, you've got a dangerous middle name. And also triple barrel name means, obviously, you're the shooter on the grassy knoll.
Oh, golly, I hope not.
Because remember, people who commit crime in the States always seem to have 3 names. Ever noticed that? Lee Harvey Oswald, John Wayne Gacy. Oh, they're men too.
Oh, I don't know if I'm ever going to get that notorious. If I do, I hope
not.
Well, if I do, I hope it's not for murder.
Right. Now, tell us about the history of the Zener card. I was under the belief that it had something to do with the Zener television show or something to do with that. Am I right about that?
So not to my knowledge, or not from my research, but then again, my research, who knows, maybe it was not comprehensive enough. So they were invented by a psychology researcher who was looking at parapsychology. So his name was Carl Zener, and this research was being done in the 1930s. So they were really interested in, trying to be more systematic and methodical in examining sort of psi phenomena, as they call it, or everything in that realm.
Of course, most people would have seen these in the opening scene of Ghostbusters with Bill Murray.
Yes. And there's actually on their Wikipedia page, there is a long list of different places where they've appeared in different movies and songs and album pictures, all this kind of stuff. So they come up a lot in popular culture.
And of course, you've got to play the stats with them because there's normally 5, so you've got at any time 20% chance of picking one of them. Is that correct?
Yes. So they're usually a classic deck has 25 cards, so 5 of each type. So ideally, when it's done well, you want to put, each time you pull out a card to look at it, you put it back in. Because if you keep taking them out, then it makes it very easy to count cards. A lot easier to count cards than just from a standard deck. Oh. So if anyone's a bit cluey, got a good memory, good with maths, they could very easily game it if you don't put the cards back in.
Now, have you been practicing at home?
I haven't been, but I've been reading about it. But I did. It was something that I did as a teenager. I think I roped my parents into doing it with me. Didn't find anything, but it was fun to play with.
Oh, and look, you've actually got something oogie boogie. You're wearing how would you describe what you're wearing? Because it's got you are wearing the occult.
Ouija board dress, I think, would be the easiest way of describing it. I thought it would be quite appropriate for the night, and I've got my little crystal earrings.
Oh,
We've got some.
Does that mean they get vibrations or they pick up vibrations? Is there something about that particular? I know rose quartz is special. Is that a special quartz?
You know what I think? I think they're all special, but the problem is everyone that I read about, they tell me they're special in a different way, so I don't know what the answer is to that one.
Yeah, it's a problem in woo. It tends to be a bit inconsistent.
Something, I guess, inconsistent and interesting about the Zener cards is that it can't tell you whether the ability you're testing for is telepathy or clairvoyance. So, for instance, if you were to get a particularly good score, it could be because you're reading my mind, that you can hear my thoughts thinking it's a square or it's a triangle or it's the wavy lines. But it could also be clairvoyance, so you're just somehow pulling that information in from the universe.
Oh, so it could be seeing the card rather than seeing what's in your mind.
That's actually a third option I hadn't thought about. So that would be what's that called when you can view things?
Hang on. I think it would be clairvoyance. That's seeing things. Clairaudient is hearing things. Yeah.
Oh, yes, okay.
So I don't know if... Yes, because if you're clairvoyant... Am I seeing it from you, or am I seeing it somehow from another dimension from the card? That's a tough one.
Well, what about remote viewing, or would that be too close?
Yes, it could possibly be an example of remote viewing as well. Wow.
Fascinating. Many things it could be.
Look, don't worry. We'll get to MK... people at home, I know, we'll get to MK Ultra eventually, okay? Look, I look forward to telling everyone about this. And do you think we'll have many people getting it right?
Look, I'm always hoping. I'm always hopeful, but I think it's not too likely. Although, in a smaller sample size like this, you can get outliers. That's just the nature of statistics. Maybe you'll get someone who does really well, but it's when you have large enough numbers, large enough samples, that's when everything comes out in the wash and it tends to perform just a chance. I say tens. I'm trying to be positive. It always performs a chance so far.
Also, online you can get Ouija board black or white curtains, and you can get Ouija board black or white sheets with matching pillows, which is hilarious.
I think that might be a nice addition to my house. Oh, and here we have some mints, some mystifying mints from Richard in a beautiful Ouija board tin.
With that horrible bloody American thing he's into, wintergreen. No one likes your wintergreen, smelly man.
It's an interesting night we have for you folks. Now, long-time visitors to Skeptics in the Pub know that every month we have a talk by a scientist or somebody in the field of science, generally speaking. We've had all sorts of interesting talks. I think universally, though, the straw poll, one of the most interesting talks we had was about frogs a couple of years ago. And people remember that to this day. It was a wonderful talk by a scientist, Jodie Rowley, I think, from the Australian Museum, who talked about frogs, including the vampire frog. So you never know what you're going to get when you come to Skeptics in the Pub. Tonight is all about looking at some famous psychic tests and letting everybody here join in on the fun, so we can all test your potential psychic ability. Also here tonight is the star reporter for the Skeptic Zone podcast, Maynard, right there, everybody.
Yep, come say hello.
And he might be coming around a bit later on to have a chat to you for the podcast. If you want to say hello or give your thoughts and comments, that's always welcome. So there are 3 tests tonight. We're going to kick off with the classic Zener cards, which will be explained to you in a moment. Then we'll have the chance for everybody who wants to try their hand at water divining. Look at that, genuine water divining rods. There we go. We'll get to that soon. And the winner of the Zener cards gets a free drink at the bar of their choice. Wow, yeah, I know, this is amazing. And a t-shirt, even better. The winner of the water divining gets a glass of water. No, but they have to divine it themselves. The winner of the water divining also gets a free drink and a t-shirt. And the winner of our final test, which is the classic heads and tails, which is a prediction test, see how well your psychic prediction works, gets a copy, an autographed copy of this book, And Then You're Dead. A scientific exploration of the world's most interesting ways to die.
That's uplifting.
It is uplifting, which I reviewed on the Skeptic Zone podcast, and I met the author, and so that's autographed by the author. So that's the grand prize tonight. But tonight it's all about fun and interest. And to help kick off our first test, we'll have Tim standing by in a moment to assist. I'll be assisting the wonderful Jessica Hazard-White, everybody.
Jessica's taking the stage.
Hello. I'm not used to holding a microphone, so if I'm holding it too close or too far, someone put their hand up and tell me, okay? So I'm going to be giving a little bit of an introduction on Zener cards. So first, I'll just start by showing you what they look like.
They're ready. The room is hushed.
Okay, this is where the Skeptics rubber meets the road, skeptically.
Give Jessica the very first card and we'll begin.
Richard is approaching Jessica and giving her a Xena card, which she's holding close so no one can see it. People are guessing.
15 seconds.
We can hear what she's thinking. A lot of white noise there, but just earlier, Jessica was mentioning that she's a big fan of the movie Grease 2.
Time.
She could be the only fan of the movie Grease 2.
All right, next round. Here we go.
4 cards now. You could cut the tension in the room with something that wasn't a knife that could cut tension that can't be physically felt. Let's just see how the shadowy elite skeptics go when they're put to the real test. Oh, hello? Oh, someone has got bingo.
5 seconds.
We're up to round 8 now.
And that's that round?
With the Xena cards. Jessica is having trouble concentrating, I think because the Xena cards have been dipped in catnip. Richard Saunders is dressed sartorially tonight in his Carl Sagan outfit. The brown Carl Sagan jacket with the black Carl Sagan shirt.
What I'll need you to do now is swap your paper around the room. Next door neighbour or the table across. Doesn't matter as long as it's somebody you trust.
We just swapped ours.
All right, pass it to somebody you don't trust.
Okay, is everyone ready? Oh, that way.
Fairly tense moment here.
Number 1, cross. Cross. And then the last one, 10 is a cross. Or a plus. Whichever you prefer.
Redraw. Redraw.
8 was wavy lines.
Right, so anyone at this table got it? How'd you go around there? Any good? No. He's not psychic. He might be a member of the shadowy elite, but he's not psychic.
Not a psychic. Clearly not a psychic.
And now we find out if among about the 100 skeptics here, anybody got all 10 correct.
How do I control my crowd? Guys. You got your papers back? Yes. Okay. Who got 0?
Top effort! Alethea, 0. Boo.
Okay.
Poor effort.
Okay, did anyone get 10?
No 10 out of 10.
6.
Congratulations.
There goes someone in the room got 6.
What we're going to do now is invite you to form a queue just here. Don't all come up at once. And we're going to give you each a divining rod, and your job is to walk along the boxes until you think you know which box the water's in, and then your name will be recorded with the box of your selection. And once everyone's had a go, hopefully there'll be a number of successful people, and we'll have a playoff for the winners.
Right, now it's for the people to come up and see if they can find out what bottle Richard has hidden it under. We all hid it from him. It's been randomly assigned by a dice.
Now, of course, you only come up if you want to give it a go. That's quite right. If you want to sit back and have another drink, go for it.
Now, that's a good idea. I'm going to go off to the bar. We will join it back in just a moment.
Somebody's just alerted me to the fact that it's absolutely pouring outside. So if the divining rod goes a bit haywire, you can blame that.
You feeling confident, are you, sir?
Absolutely.
You done some water divining before?
No.
Oh, good, okay.
Not that I know of.
Well, this could be your first time.
Very
A future millionaire I was talking to there. And of course, who should I find at the bar but Alethea, who is checking out the house sparkling, as you would expect from a woman of her quality. So how'd you go on the Xena card test, Alethea?
I got a big goose egg.
Nothing?
Nothing.
Rubbish. Call yourself a member of the shadowy elite, I say.
Yeah.
And you're not going to have a go at the water divining?
I already went.
Oh.
We don't know yet, do we? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, which one did you get an attraction to?
I didn't get the attraction. The divining rods.
Oh, okay,
was
right.
Immediately attracted to 5.
5. Okay, rightio. Well, we'll just see how she goes when there is when it's reviewed in just a minute. Okay, she's doing some champagne divining right now, actually, by the way. Lara, you're looking confident with this, are you?
Yeah, very confident.
Oh, yeah, she can find water anywhere. Mind you, she doesn't drink water. Right, so I'm at the table now watching as we go through, people using their divining rods with the hidden bottle of water under one of 6 different containers. People are testing out their... So you're feeling confident, are you?
I am indeed.
Just watch her go.
I think my rod is...
She has confidence in her rod. Okay. Okay, she's walking along. There seems to be no deflection at all at the moment. Doesn't seem to be going not getting anything either way, are you really? It's pointing at Ian Bryce. Bit of a disappointment, really. That's not quite... Although he is mainly... right. Now she's hit herself in the chin. Here we go. He's our... You still feeling confident?
No.
No, he's lost it all, really. He's gone to water here, but that's what we're looking for. Okay, here he goes. Okay, a first-timer. And he's got something there. He's feeling it for number 3. We'll just take you sideline now to where Jessica and Richard are. Richard, you run a few of these before. How do you think the people seem to be going? But only you know where it is, so don't say anything. But what do you think of the style of the divining rod usage here tonight at the Skeptics?
I'm pretty impressed. The style of the diviners is pretty good. Not many people are dipping it or using it incorrectly. It's like they've had some sort of spooky experience. But the tension is high. This gentleman is now deciding between 4 and 5 and 3, I think.
Oh, man, the tension. It's just something you can cut with something you cut tension with.
5, and can I have your name, please?
Jim.
Jim, and can I have the first letter of your last name, please?
Okay.
Sorry, K? Beautiful. Thank you.
So, do most people seem confident as they give you their number, Jessica?
I think so.
Okay.
5.
And can I grab your name, please?
Gail.
Okay, do you feel confident in your pick, do you, Gail?
Yes.
She's very confident. She could be a winner there.
That's the number.
Okay, Richard, now this is the second round, so there were 6 people who had the number. Is that about regular for a poopy this size?
For a room this size, but we're just about to announce the
winner. Okay, right. Okay, we're going on here.
Would you like to do the reveal?
Okay.
So, Jessica, you have the scores?
Yes, I do.
Well, the predicted, the divine box. So here we go. Out of all the diviners in the room who gave it a go and made it to the second round, those who thought it was under number 1. Was there anybody here who thought it was under 1?
Kate.
Number 2. Did anybody say number 2?
Bad luck, Dale.
Number 3.
Yes, we had Harry, Barbara, and Papa.
3 people thought it was under number 3. Number 4. Ready for 4?
No, none for 4.
Nobody thought it was under number 4. I'll leave that for a moment. Number 5.
No 5s.
No 5s?
Oh, 5s.
Okay, it was either number 4 or number 6.
We had somebody who said 6.
Yes, Daryl.
Daryl's all right.
Only one person, Daryl, picked the water that was under box number 6.
And what we can see there, who can tell me the probability of getting 2 runs correct by chance alone?
1 in 36.
1 in 36, very good. So if we were doing this for the $100,000 that we have, or $1 million or whatever, we need slightly better odds than that, and we'd normally we'd aim for 1 in a million if we can possibly achieve it. So there'd be quite a few more runs required before we would reach that confidence level. Anyway, let's say thanks to all the diviners for doing a good job.
On your table, you'll find our little flyer for the Australian Skeptics $100,000 challenge. We do proper psychic tests, I promise you, which are a lot of fun, by the way, when we do them. And we do water divining tests, which are very similar to the one we did here tonight. But it's been a great pleasure to come here tonight and show you some of the interesting things we actually get to do in the Australian Skeptics and not only come to the pub and have lots of drinks. Tim, do you have anything to wrap up the night with?
Just take the magazines away, please.
Yes, there are magazines around. Please feel free to take those away. And subscribe. Thank you, Tim. But on behalf of Ian, Bryce, Jessica Hazard-White and myself, thank you all and enjoy the rest of the evening.
Okay.
Just a minute.
We're speaking to the winner of the water divining here, Daryl. Now, to what do you put down your amazing success finding the bottle of water tonight?
Well, I found the bottle of water by dangling my Android phone over the boxes.
Well, so you were cheating.
That's not how I cheated. The way I cheated was that I psychokinetically told the dice which way to land.
Why, that's a new one. That's a new one, Mr. Smarty Richard.
I'm gobsmacked. I didn't think of that.
Yes. You put that in your credibility and smoke it. Well done, sir. What did you win for your efforts tonight?
I won a T-shirt and a drink.
Well, that's the biggest prize that's ever been given to the Skeptics ever, so congratulations. That won't happen again.
No. I enjoyed the drink, though.
Well done. Well, congratulations, sir.
Thank you.
But, Richard, how did it go tonight? Pretty much what you would have expected with this about 100 people here?
Yeah. You know what it really was? We had 2 rounds of water divining, which was about right. We had 6 rounds of heads and tails, which is about right, 6 or 7 rounds. And the only thing that was out of the ordinary was somebody got 6 Xena cards right, and we didn't expect that.
Right, because you would expect a result of 2 or 3 at the most usually, wouldn't you?
2 or 3, but it's if you look at a bell curve, it's certainly within the bell curve. And if we did it again and again and again, it would even out, of course. But that was a slightly unusual result.
Now, with water divining, where you have a choice of 6, Ian was saying to get the $10,000 Skeptic Prize here in Australia, you would have to get to the 1 in a million point. How many times would you have to get it right out of the 1 in 6 to get to the 1 in a million result?
You've got me on the spot. I'd have to do the calculations. But 1 in a million is more of a phrase. It just has to be sufficient to exclude chance.
Right. So 1 in 100,000 would probably be good enough.
Yeah, depending on the test. But the point is, it could be 1 in a trillion. If somebody can do it, then the odds don't matter.
Because they'll repeatedly do it.
They'll just do it. We could throw any odds they like at it.
Okay.
Yeah, so I've just come up with a drink for Richard. Maynard, can I buy you a drink?
Yes, thank you. I'll go with that 70s classic, vodka and orange in a short glass, thank you.
Awesome, will do.
Thank you for listening to the Skeptic Zone this week. Now, as I said at the top of the show, late breaking news. Let me have a look. According to the ABC, abc.net.au, there's an item here published today, just published. Anti-vaccination myths debunked in a new campaign to counter low immunisation rates. This goes on to say there is no truth in the anti-vaccination campaign, and the ongoing myths around it are putting Australian lives at risk, Australia's chief medical officer has said at the launch of a new campaign in Melbourne. And I think, gathering what I can gather quickly, it could be the work of the anti-vaxxers that has helped inspire this new campaign. A film, Vaxxed from Cover-Up to Catastrophe, has been causing controversy by linking measles, mumps, rubella vaccine to autism. So the government it says the Australian government launched a $5.5 million immunisation education campaign to counter the views of the anti-vaccination lobby with evidence-based information that parents could easily access. Gee, anti-vaxxers, I don't know, maybe we should send you a bottle of champagne for helping raise the level of awareness in this country through the federal government to the benefits of vaccine. Well done, well done. Enough of that sarcasm. Coming up on next week's show, well, if there's any updates to this story, we'll certainly bring you those. I know we have some more reports from the Raw Skeptic, Heidi Robinson, waiting in the wings. Heidi was very busy. She sent me some wonderful reports and interviews, so we'll slot one of those in for next week, I think. We're going to bring you some of the highlights of the launch of Science Week, or the Science Festival here in Sydney, Maynard and I went down to the Powerhouse Museum just a few nights ago, where we attended the launch and had a really wonderful time. Thank you to the wonderful folks at the Powerhouse Museum for having us there. And we spoke to lots of scientists, including the fabulous Dr. Jodie Rowley from the Australian Museum, who's an expert on frogs. Frogs, it's really interesting stuff. And as ever, my personal thanks to everybody who contributes to the show to keep it online, on air, out there, in your ears. You know what I mean. And no matter where you're listening to us, if you're sitting on the train at the moment, almost at your work from commuting, if you're out walking the dog or jogging, some people listen to us riding their bicycles. Some people, some truckers in Australia, and I know in Canada, driving through the snow, listen to the Skeptic Zone. Well, I'm really pleased that we are keeping you company. We're your friend, I hope, on long journeys, something interesting for you to listen to. But until next week, this is Richard Saunders, signing off from Sydney, Australia. You've been listening to the Skeptic Zone podcast. Visit our website at www.skepticzone.tv for contacts, an archive of all episodes since 2008, and our online store. Please support the Skeptic Zone by following us on Twitter @SkepticZone, liking us on Facebook, and leaving a review on iTunes. You can also show your support by subscribing via PayPal for as little as 99 cents a week. The Skeptic Zone is an independent production. The views and opinions expressed on the Skeptic Zone are not necessarily those of Australian Skeptics Inc. or any other skeptical organisation. I've opened the window of the studio here, and there are two little Skeptic Zone cats. Hello. They're sniffing the microphone. You too. Now, just before leaping down, they were letting their presence be known with meows and things, because I think they want some breakfast. What's that? Of course, once you put the microphone on and you want them to say something. Silence. Come up here, come on. Look, see that? Let's see what we can get them to say. Maud? I know. This is a surefire way. I'll run downstairs. Here we go. And I'll go into the laundry where their cat food is. Aha. And here we go. Yeah, happy cats now.